Hey, everybody. Mark and I have over 20 years of experience as therapists and as addicts in long-term successful recovery. We know better than anyone what works and what doesn't to break out of porn and sex addiction, heal betrayal trauma, and reclaim your relationship.
And we've poured all of our personal and professional recovery and healing experience into a first-of-its-kind program for addicts, spouses, and couples. We call it Dare to Connect.
At least 4 times every week, we engage with you in real time, in the trenches, giving you the knowledge and the tools to take back your life and relationship.
Whatever else you've done on your journey for healing and recovery, you've never done anything like this.
Mark and I, we've made all the mistakes, so you don't have to. Don't reinvent the wheel.
We all know tomorrow never comes. Look, don't wait one more day to change. Claim your free 2-week trial today at daretoconnectnow.com. Hey everyone, Mark and Steve with you on the PBSE podcast. This is episode 201. We got a really amazing submission from one of our PBSE listeners. It's a partner, and it's so raw and real. We just had to read it because it's just so hard. And man, did our hearts melt. Oof. So I'm gonna read what she sent us, and then we are going to address this. So he says, "Hi guys, thanks so much for your podcast. It has been very helpful to listen to. I hope to join your D2C program soon once my income is stabilized. My husband had an affair with a friend of mine who was actually staying with us at the time. My husband and I have been living in separate houses on the same property since one of the discovery days." And she says in parentheses, "Yay for trickle truth." So she's been listening to us about just how
truth disclosures.
Yeah, trickle truth disclosures over time rather than all at once. "I am now in the beginning of the 1-year anniversary of a 4-month period in which I was severely gaslit by both my partner and my friend. My suspicions and anger were blamed on my menopause, and the gaslighting ending up in me having a nervous breakdown at the end of November last year. The gaslighting continued after that until Discovery Day 5 weeks later. And even then, I was still blamed, shamed, and yelled at by him upon every discovery of his destructive behaviors. The gaslighting behavior has continued off and on since that time, especially since he admitted to a porn addiction. With him stonewalling, not replying to my texts, etc., shaming me, blaming me, being disrespectful to me, talking over me, patronizing me, etc., etc. He says he wants to make things work with me, that he doesn't want to hurt me again, and that he wants to be with me for the rest of his life. I have expressed to him what I need in order for us to be able to move forward as a couple, such as work with a therapist, join your program, do 12-step, etc. But he is doing a porn addiction recovery course online and feels that that is all he can handle for now. He is still not relational with me, cannot hold space for me when I have coping issues. He ran away the other night as he felt I was losing it. He's inconsistent, has excuses for not adhering to my boundaries and not addressing my needs, and is hesitant to do a full disclosure. Now, being in the beginning of the 1-year anniversary of all of this, things are getting really bad, and the same things are happening for me as they did last year. And me being unable to sleep due to feeling constantly unsafe, feeling angry and upset a lot, and not being able to have relational conversations with him. I told him that I do not feel safe here. I live in the same house where they did all of that stuff. and I do not feel safe with him. He cannot understand why I don't feel safe with him and keeps saying that he is not a danger to me. So here comes her questions. Can you please do a podcast about safety for the betrayed spouse? Why we don't feel safe, what it takes to make us feel safe, and how important it is for us to start feeling safe again. And also what makes us feel threatened and unsafe. Woo, that is a lot.
That is a lot.
Yeah.
Lot to process there for sure. Well, yeah, we've read through this multiple times and it's still hard to read. And we have lots of thoughts, but we wanted to try and convey these, with this being a podcast, a shortened format. We want to concentrate on the questions that this poor partner sent to us and try to walk through it that way. Because I'm sure we'll cover most of our thoughts during that.
Yep.
As we go through. So first of all, why do betrayed partners feel unsafe? Oh, where to begin? I feel like I'm over here on the other end. I feel like I'm cracking my knuckles and getting ready to roll here. Everyone listening, it's important that everybody understands the following. Betrayal is no less of a loss than physically losing a person that you're close to. Oftentimes when we look at betrayal or we look at trauma, we may say that it's hard and it's hurtful. We may even acknowledge that or try to create space for it. But what many fail to understand is that betrayal trauma, specifically within an intimate relationship, is no different. And in some ways, I have clients who would argue is worse than the loss of a person.
If that person had died.
Yes. Because the person is still here, still hurting them, and is kind of present. It's almost the loss without being able to grieve something in totality because we're now in this new reality, right? It's a loss of everything. When we talk about betrayal, obviously betrayal can happen in different ways and in different relationships. When you're talking about a marriage or a committed relationship, which for most people is the most, if not one of the most intimate relationships that they have in their existence on planet Earth. And the bottom falls out on that. What research and experience has shown time and time again is that probably the biggest determiner of the depth of trauma is the depth to which the relationship that the betrayal occurs in extends. Sometimes we will hear husbands say that this is a loss. They'll question when we say, this is a loss of everything. For them, it's a loss of everything. Because for many spouses, you're everything.
It's a loss of everything because you are everything to her.
You are in many ways are their whole world, or at least attached to parts of their whole world, right? If we're talking in a healthy way. But obviously, every relationship also has elements of codependency as well. You're the most important person in the world to them. So when we go out as addicts or as betrayers, and we gaslight, when we lie, when we manipulate, when we withhold the truth, when we minimize, when we shortcut, when we skirt, when we do all of the things that Mark and I have done, and all the things that too many of you have that are listening have done, we probably are probably finding success in doing the most damaging thing we could possibly do to our partner.
Yeah,
because it really is a questioning of everything.
Yeah, it's everything I thought that this relationship was. It's everything I thought about him. It's everything about my place in all of this, right? And if we talk about because this is such a huge loss and the processing of that loss, right? If we talk about, okay, so what's been lost? One of the things that jumped out at Steve and I as we read this was it's a loss of reality.
Yep.
My faith in my own story.
Yeah. The whole narrative.
The whole thing.
Right?
Was any of it ever real? Was it all a lie? Did he ever love me? Yeah.
If this man that I have been married to for X amount of years, I've shared a bed with, I've made kids with, I've done everything in my world with, could keep these things from me, what is to say everyone else isn't keeping things from me? We hear this from partners all the time. Because that betrayal happened again on that intimate level, what have we done unwittingly, and albeit probably unintentionally, but that doesn't diminish accountability? We have cut the knees off of our partner's faith, not just in ourselves, but in theory, many, if not most, of the relationships that are in lesser importance going down from there.
Yes. Yep. There's
the damage is profound.
This massive loss of trust, not just in him, but trust in myself.
Absolutely.
And sometimes the trust even of others, right? What do we often hear? How could I have been that clueless? How did he do all of this and I not know? Do I have any ability to be intuitive? Can I trust my gut about anything? I mean, am I crazy? Am I just dumb? Stupid? Right? This trust in self is a big loss in this process.
Absolutely. You know, going to her first question, why do we feel unsafe? Safety is determined by what? It's determined by many things, but if you talk about biology of the brain, safety is determined in many ways by what is known.
Yes,
right?
is known.
Our familiarity with our environment. When we are at home, why do we feel so comfortable there? It's a combination of a number of things, right? We've had positive memories there, a lot of other elements, but what else is it? Everything's known. I know where this is located. I know what happens in this room. I know what goes on here.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're dealing with a situation of, oh, there's the bed that my husband and I used to be intimate together with and practice intimacy. That's no longer a space where that happens. That's a space where he was with his mistress now and chose somebody else physically over me.
Yeah,
right?
or this is the house or
Yes.
the apartment or the hotel room or the vacation condo that I thought was special to us, or right, the list just goes on and on and on.
That street you always take to work because now the strip club you were going to and lying about is located on it. Your wife's drive to work just became difficult. Guys, it's really important. We know that we're speaking with pretty strong language here, but you have to understand how profound the actions that or inactions that you take in your partner's world are for them. We can totally speak to feeling like that's hard to grasp at your stage because it was hard for us as well. Do yourself a favor and trust two guys who have been there and already done it the hard way.
Yeah.
You will save yourself a lot of grief and time as will you on your wife's side as well. So this loss of safety, this loss of the known, part of the betrayal trauma reaction of a brain is picture like, again, you took a person, you blindfolded them and you stuck them into a completely unknown environment. They don't know who they're around. They don't know who's in the room with them. They don't know anything. And they're literally crawling around on their hands and knees trying to figure out just the basic layout. That's your partner following your actions.
Exactly. One of the other areas of a huge loss that we see so much that's especially heartbreaking for me and Steve, because we saw this in our own partners, is the loss that a partner goes through of their own worth and self-image.
Yeah.
Who am I now? How did I become so unwanted by him? Why am I no longer worth him choosing me? Right? Will I ever be enough to him romantically? Will I ever be enough to anyone else in general? Right? How can I ever compare to these outlets and people that he's accessing through his addiction? Right? This competition now, this comparison. I mean, it just destroys self-worth and self-image through this whole process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's speak to a little bit. Let's speak to you partners for a minute, because I know we've been kind of talking here about, we've been talking a lot about the addict side of this. So let's talk to partners for just a minute. So the brains, if we talk about again what happens in the brain, I know again we hear this all the time. Spouses tend to feel a lot of shame, a lot of fear, a lot of other emotions around just the initial trauma response and what's going on inside of them. Right? They feel crazy, they feel insane. And sadly, we as addict partners do a pretty thorough job in more cases than not of reinforcing that thinking, intentionally or not.
Otherwise so it's known as gaslighting.
Yes. So it's important for you to absolutely know that what you're feeling is completely not only healthy, but we would argue is your brain's healthy wiring coming online. The brain's internal trauma response is designed to protect us.
Yes.
Okay? When we experience something that is emotionally or physically damaging, the trauma response steps in to immediately, it acts like a referee that comes in, blows the whistle, calls a timeout and says, whoa, 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 no more, stop. Everyone stop, right? and it immediately calls a timeout, and it causes us to do any number of things, right? Ranging from pulling back to isolating from the source of that trauma to any number of other things that we cover in other podcasts. The point is that what we're trying to make is that when you feel those internal responses, we can get behind the seeming insanity behind some of those initial feelings. You're not broken. This is absolutely normal. Okay. You are in a place of questioning everything and everyone. And we would say that makes logical sense for the reasons that we just listed for you. Right. When it comes to your own healing, one thing that I just want to say, because this is going to kind of segue into these other sections we're going to get into here. When we are doing healthy recovery work, the internal trauma responses that we have inside, we need to honor those, respect those, and hold space for those. It's the external trauma reactions that are sometimes toxic that we work to change. Okay, so when you're doing your own work, it's important to remember the goal here is not to feel trauma. Okay, the goal is to regulate how you respond and what you do with the messaging that your healthy brain that's trying to save you is giving you.
Yeah, because what we want to help partners do, often what happens in the absolute overwhelm of betrayal trauma is in an effort to try to cope with that. You'll have partners who will step into behaviors that are not authentic to her. Right? I was a very outgoing and really friendly and happy and vocal person. Now I've just become depressed and shut down and isolated. Right? I'm not being authentic. My external response to this internal trauma is taking me out of my authentic place. Or I've become a raging, crazy person. That's not me. Right? What is happening? Well, it's an external response from the internal turmoil, which is all very legitimate. But we want to help all of you to start to get into a place where, what does it take to start to feel safe again? What does it take? Yeah.
Yeah. And Dare to Connect, we're now in week 5 of a long series on betrayal trauma. We're deep diving on this topic right now every day. Mm-hmm. And we're going to go at least a couple more weeks in D2C with it. We didn't plan on that, but that's what our subscribers need right now. So we are. And we're talking about this right now, right? The regulation of the external responses while honoring and feeling and acknowledging and working with those internal feelings.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So there's lots to say, but we, for sake of podcast time, we do have to press on. So
yeah, so let's talk about what it takes to be safe again. And Steve, when you and I talked about this as we were preparing, we both almost said this word in almost the same voice. Boundaries, yes. Right? but this concept of immediately trying to get to the place of establishing baseline boundaries, because what do we want to have happen? Try to put baseline boundaries in place that make the immediate environment and situation safe. Because what is the brain saying? I'm not safe. I'm not safe. So I've got to get baseline boundaries in place as an immediate priority to get to some level of safety.
Yeah.
Right. And we could talk, Steve, real quick about what are baseline boundaries.
Yeah. I mean, things to look at, especially in a situation like this, is you need to start with the real fundamental basics and then kind of work out from there. So physical space, what's needed right now, right? That fight, flight, freeze response that accompanies the brain's trauma response is real. And if you are in a situation where the triggers are so escalated and being around somebody, they're so great that you're constantly in a fight, flight, freeze response, working on any of this is going to be impossible. It's the equivalent of trying to feel relaxed in your campsite while a bear is just sitting there 15 feet away from you next to the campfire, toasting a marshmallow with you. You're not going to feel safe. Okay. So you might need physical space. That can look like anything from sleeping in separate rooms to possibly in different places. Maybe sex needs to come off the table. Maybe it's not a question of moving out. Maybe intimacy needs to go. Maybe there are certain topics that, for the sake of time, there are certain topics that have to be, or not sake of time, but for sake of just their content, need to be reserved for a therapy office or for some other venue that are safe, right? Mm-hmm. All of those things are going to be kind of baselines that you're going to want to look at and then work out from there.
And once you get those baseline boundaries, those immediate boundaries in place to at least get some level of rudimentary safety going, you're going to immediately then want to identify and tap into a support system that is outside of the betrayer, right? You're not going to find safety in the one who betrayed you. And I know it's natural to want to go to that person, right? Again, because of the depth and the intimacy of the past relationship, I want him to fix this.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't have the person that punched you unpunch you, so to speak. And so we know how hard it is, but to find this outside support system, right? So through through different 12-step groups, one that comes to mind is S-Anon, to find a therapist, other outside resources, Steve, that come to your mind.
Well, Dare to Connect, obviously, the one that we
of course
supply would be great. It has support systems, it has groups, it has all of those things kind of built into it. But wherever you go, right, the importance is that you have a balanced support system. And I would say that, and this kind of ties into the, her last question of what is critical to healing, where we oftentimes find partners set themselves up for failure. And sometimes their addict partner plays a role in this because they're desperate for their partner to connect with them, even though it may not be safe, is sometimes we will, out of a desire for the relationship to be healthy, we will continue to engage in the relationship based on the paradigm of where we want the relationship to be safety-wise and transparency-wise, rather than where it actually is.
Yes.
And so acceptance, as my wife's 12-step group says all the time, is the answer today to all of my problems. And acceptance in this case is the first best step. It's a recognition of, I may love this man, I may care about him, and we may still have a shot and we can work on this. But right now, today, in this moment, how safe is he?
Right.
I can't base my response with him based on potential. I have to base it on verifiable fact, because potential is going to keep you in that same unsafe state, which is going to not only hinder your progress in recovery, but also your coupleships, and probably will actually derail the two of you even more.
And having that outside support system, right? You need to have a place where you can go to learn about what betrayal trauma is, that you're not crazy, you're not overreacting, right? That this is a normal response, and be able to talk with others who have been there and can teach you about what it is. You need a place to speak your truth and be heard without judgment and with true empathy, right? Because there's people there who have been where you are. Receiving mentoring and guidance from those that are farther down the road. Validation for your pain and what you're going through, right?
Absolutely.
That's external to the betrayer. You can't go and get empathy and true support from the person who has betrayed you, at least not initially and for a while.
Exactly.
Until he does a lot of work on his part.
Because remember, guys, everything that your capacity to receive anything from your partner, anything, is it. Think of like the wire, the circuit that connects the two of you that way. The receiving line is made up 90% of what? It's made up of trust.
Yes.
And if the trust isn't there, it doesn't matter what he says or how eloquently he says it. It's going to be all bullshit to your brain. Right. That's what's going to happen. And again, that's your brain's healthy trauma response saying, yeah, you screwed us over 6 ways to Sunday before. Bullcrap. Right?
Yeah.
So that's why this outside support system is so critical.
It's so critical. And having said that, there's also another area that's often overlooked. It's the whole area of your own self-care. Yeah. Right? How am I taking care of myself? Because you said this before we started today, Steve, there's got to be a clear distinction between your relationships recovery and your individual healing. Yeah. Too often those get kind of mixed up and muddy. You've got to take care of you first, without exception. That the focus is there. It cannot be on the relationship yet. So what are the aspects of your emotional, physical, spiritual self-care, right? Are you taking care of you? Are you renewing and recharging? You don't have to wait on your partner that has betrayed you. You don't have to wait on him or feel dependent on his progress or the lack thereof for you to move forward with your own healing and your own wellness.
And to expand on what Mark is saying, you can't afford to.
You
cannot afford to wait. You've got to go now.
Yeah.
And so, and hopefully that you guys hear that for what that's intended to be, which is just to empower you. The relationship is an amalgam of the work that you do, the work that he does, and that's a complicated process. But you do not need to wait on him for you to start to get better.
Because
So,
one of the things that shouted at me from what she wrote to us, and when I saw this, I thought of Mark and his deep addiction. She said, "Yeah, I've gone to him and told him about all the things that I need and what we need as a couple to go forward, getting a therapist, joining a program like D2C, getting into 12-step work." What was his response? "Well, I'm doing an online porn addiction recovery course, and that's all I can handle right now."
yeah.
Boy, oh boy, did my BS meter alarm start sounding loudly, because Mark, I used to do that so much. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm in this the study course right now, so I can't get really raw and real and authentic and face all my stuff by going to a therapist and being confronted in a 12 step group. No, I'm just going to do this online course right now. I did that all the time. What was it
Yeah.
about? It was about avoidance. It was about not being willing or ready to lean into the hard and to face the true realities of what I had created. And so, boy, did I see that. So, in the gal that sent this stuff into us, she's got to go forward. And if he's going to, be in a course and that's all he's going to do, she's got to get moving.
Yeah.
And take care of herself, right?
Well, and with these courses, again, we don't want to diminish anything out there. And it's great that he's working on something, right? We definitely want to
It's helpful.
props where props are due, but lovingly, based on this submission that we got, we read it for you word for word. That is not the primary target that needs to be worked on right now, right? What we're looking at is we're working on a significant wound. Is pornography an issue here? Yeah, clearly, right? Pornography is an issue. I would not say it's the issue, particularly when it comes to the relationship. And so there probably needs to be a pretty direct discussion between this partner and this addict around, look, I'm grateful for what you are doing, but we may have a level 1 trauma over here, but I'm at a level 5. And I'm going to be bled out by the time you do whatever it is you're doing with your class. So what can we do to put some sort of a direction towards this? Because these are my needs. I'd like you to do it with me. But if you're not able to do it with me, whether it's therapy or Dare to Connect or some other program or whatever it is, I'm going to do it now. The train is leaving the station. Please join me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. The last part of this is, why is everything we've just talked about so critical to healing? It's because this partner needs a safe place to land.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Her life. She's like on the airplane of her life, and it's spinning out of control because of all this. And she's got to try to bring it into at least a safe place to land, so that she can start to get her arms wrapped around what now, right?
Yes.
How do I go forward now? And so you already talked about acceptance, about where the relationship is, not where she hopes it would be or thought it was, but what is the reality. That's a big part of this. And and by the way, it's impossible to heal if there's continued re-traumatization.
So true.
If my partner has punched me in the face and I'm really smarting and bruised and hurting from that, but now I keep putting myself in the place where he keeps punching me, I'm never going to heal.
Absolutely. And how often as addicts do we do that, whether it's intentionally or not? It's like we literally, in one hand, we've got an ice pack, and in the other hand, we've got brass knuckles.
Yeah.
And it's really sick when you think about it.
And she talked about it through his gaslighting, his blaming, his shifting all of it to her, right? To turning the tables. All of that is like I'm continuing to punch my partner who's already bruised and hurting.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So there's lots here, guys. Lots to do, lots that could be said about this. We do need to wrap up here today. We have so much empathy for you spouses who are working on this and in these difficult situations. We know that you're dealing with hard and difficult things, and we just so honor all the work that you're doing. We do encourage you to take the steps you need to find healing for you today. Please don't wait. Please don't fall into that trap that frankly our spouses really do.
Yeah. True.
That we were guilty of that. And I hate to admit it, I was a big purporter of that. I tried to keep my wife from going and getting help, and there were lots of twisted reasons for that. And I wish I could go back and slap that guy around because he needed it. So please take the steps now. As always, there are lots of places you can go out there. May we suggest give Dare to Connect a shot. If you're looking for a one-stop shop for a source for everything that we've talked about here today, short of individual therapy itself, Dare to Connect, we work very, very hard to make sure that it is the Amazon of recovery from sexual addiction. And you can find what you need there. We encourage you to give it a shot at daretoconnectnow.com. There's a 2-week trial you can grab there today and give it a shot, see what all that's about. And as always, we would love to hear questions, feedback from you, whatever you've got for us about the podcast. We just celebrated year 4. The baby turned 4 years old last week. So
yep.
We're in our fourth year now. And again, couldn't be more 5th year. We're starting our 5th year. So we couldn't be more grateful for all of you. Please visit pbsepodcast.com. Shoot us a message down there at the contact form with questions that you'd like addressed on the podcast. We'd love to hit on those for you. So.
Yeah. Thanks for being with us today, wading through some really hard stuff. We just so appreciate all of you and everything that you're trying to do. And we will look forward to spending time with you on our next episode.
Take care. Everything expressed on the PBSE podcast are the opinions of the hosts and the participants and is for informational and educational purposes only. This podcast should not be considered mental health therapy or as a substitute thereof. It is strongly recommended that you seek out the clinical guidance of an individual qualified mental health professional. If you're experiencing thoughts of suicide, self-harm, or a desire to harm others, please dial 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.